And after months of back and forth, the House has overwhelmingly passed a bill ordering the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Just moments ago, the House making history with a near unanimous vote that brings us just a step closer to seeing DOJ's files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his underage sex trafficking ring. Here's the moment the vote was officially gavelled out.
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
And then it became news. Jay O'Brien joins me now from the Hill, along with our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, also Washington managing editor, Catherine Falders, and law professor and contributor, Kim Whaley. So, Rachel, what's the reaction been on Capitol Hill? You've been out there. Who have you seen come down the steps? What have you learned?
Yeah, we're still waiting for a number of lawmakers, and excuse me as I turn around because the chamber, of course, is just right through those doors right here. We're waiting for lawmakers to come back down. They had another few votes that they wanted to take before the House is going to officially recess for the day. But so far, the reaction that we have heard from Republicans especially has been a sigh of relief, especially for those that have been pushing for this effort for quite some time. And there was just an immense amount of pressure on a handful of Republicans that were moving forward not only to co-sponsor this legislation, but really force that discharge petition that allowed this vote to even come to the floor. Just take Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, for example. I mean, she was summoned to the White House Situation Room to meet not only with the FBI director, with the Attorney General about this vote. I had an opportunity to catch up with her just yesterday. I asked her if she felt a lot of pressure to ultimately back away from her position supporting this bill. And she said, look, no. She said this was a candid conversation that she was having with Trump officials. But the president did not mince words. I mean, he did not want Republicans to move forward with this effort. Ultimately, in the final hours, he reversed course, just acknowledging the political reality that Republicans were going to vote for this anyway. And so when you think about Congressman Thomas Massie, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congressman Ro Khanna, a Democrat, who have had very close conversations, close and intimate conversations with so many of these Epstein survivors, many of whom watched this vote for the chamber. They went through extraordinary lengths to be able to get this on the floor, so they are definitely breathing a sigh of relief. But also here comes the anticipation, because now it heads over to the Senate, and there are big questions about what's going to happen there and how quickly this could get to the president's desk if it does, Kira.
All right. And Jay, this was almost unthinkable as recently as last week. How do we get to a vote of 427 to 1 today? Just tell us about this lone holdout, Clay Higgins, that actually Rachel told us about via the statement that he put out, and how so many Republicans got on board with Democrats in this final vote.
Yeah, and remember, Kira, this is a vote that had to be forced to occur. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, did not put this legislation on the floor for a vote through the normal order of business. He had opposed this legislation at every single step of the way. And this was, in a sense, a mutiny. It was all House Democrats signing on to what's called a discharge petition, which forces this vote to occur. A handful of Republicans, as Rachel mentioned, signing on with them as well, going against the wishes of the White House, going against the wishes of Speaker Mike Johnson, forcing this vote to occur. And it was only after the tea leaves started to really show that dozens of Republicans were going to break ranks with the White House and the Speaker over the weekend and vote for this that the president came out and said, oh, in fact, I want House Republicans to vote for this legislation. All of that was not enough to get Clay Higgins' vote. He was the lone Republican no vote at this hour. He said that in his view, this legislation would only serve to further victimize those who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein by allowing information about their cases, their identities to come to light, things of that nature. Now, the proponents of this legislation dispute that. They say, first, that there have been many victims who vocally want these files to be released, including those who spoke at a press conference this morning on Capitol Hill. But also, the proponents of this bill say that they have taken painstaking efforts to ensure that the identities of the victims don't come out, information about this case or confidential witnesses and things like that do not come out. But that's been the argument that the Speaker and other Republicans have made against this bill, too. But they voted for this bill, Kira, despite the fact that they believe that it's flawed because of the immense pressure that they were under, in part from their constituents and in part from their own colleagues.
And Catherine, the Department of Justice has been in possession of these files, we know, for years. But do we really know what we are going to see now, if indeed this makes it all the way to the end of the line here and they're all released?
Well, it's a good question, and we don't know what is in the trove of these files in its entirety that the FBI and DOJ have, hence why obviously we are discussing here today about making them public. We do know, Kira, as you've reported as well for months, that the administration over the past, frankly, 6 months has been worried about these files coming out. In fact, according to reports, we know that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, briefed Trump that his name was included in the files, that she briefed him back in May about that. Now, this doesn't mean that there was any wrongdoing by the president or other people, but they found it serious enough to alert Trump to that. So we don't know what's in these files. Hopefully, we do, see them at some point. But I think the question that Mary asked to Trump today is the million-dollar question, and worth asking to the White House consistently. We don't need this congressional procedure to see these documents publicly. The DOJ, the FBI, the administration can release these. They haven't yet. And the question is, why is that? They spent quite some time trying to get members of Congress to take their names off of a petition that forced this vote that we just saw. They were unsuccessful in doing that, but obviously they did that because the administration ultimately didn't want this vote to happen today, and here we are.
Well, Kim, even if the House and Senate do vote to release these files, it doesn't guarantee the full release will even happen. Is there any legal way, though, to make sure it happens?
Yeah, that's really the question. We're in a time period under which the Department of Justice is at the hands of Pam Bondi, really answering to a single man, not so much to the rule of law or the Constitution. The fact that there's this kind of enmeshment between prosecutors and Donald Trump's interests is really unprecedented. So the question will be, if the Senate does pass this bill and Donald Trump signs it into law, it's not like there's a box sitting in a closet, Kira, with all these files. This means searching the DOJ database, various sources, to see if there's anything responsive to the legislation. And then in addition to that, there will be legal limitations under the grand jury secrecy rules under Rule 6. There will be protections, legal protections for victims, in addition to whatever's in this particular legislation. Congress can lift some of those protections, but lawyers will have to go through all the DOJ and FBI files to decide what actually gets released. And then the question is, will they actually comply with the letter of the law, or more so loyalty to Donald Trump, who obviously doesn't want anything that could be incriminating? And we know he was part of Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle. We know there's already some troubling documents that have been released through Congress that implicate Donald Trump in Jeffrey Epstein's world. I think it's highly unlikely we're going to see coming out of this Justice Department any smoking gun that points any fingers, assuming it theoretically exists, we don't know, of any kind of actual criminal wrongdoing by Donald Trump. So then it would be moving it to the courts to file something to say, listen, the Justice Department has not complied with its obligations under the law, but that's an uphill battle in theory if they don't really know what they don't know. So we'll just have to see. The good news, Kira, is that this demonstrates the United States Congress is working to actually come together and move legislation, even if it's not consistent with what this president wants.
Well, I'll tell you what victims want. They want justice, and they have held compelling press conferences, even as early as this morning and throughout the day. They have met with lawmakers. Rachel, you have talked to a number of survivors. I understand you were able to catch up with some of them that were there, paying attention to this vote live on the Hill. Just give us some perspective here of how these women coming together, standing up in a group, holding this press conferences, has made an impact on all of this.
Yeah, Karen, we were just walking back over here to the steps of the Capitol because outside of one of the entrances here to the House, we saw a number of those victims, the survivors of Epstein's abuse who were leaving the Capitol. They were inside watching this vote unfold, and we all asked them what their reaction was. They were very cheerful watching this vote pass. they felt a sigh of relief, and they said, on to the Senate. That's what they started chanting, on to the Senate. They said this is just step one. They're ready for the next step. I mean, they are keenly aware here that this is not a done deal, that even though this cleared the House with a significant amount of bipartisan support, it still has to head to the Senate before getting to the president's desk. And then the Justice Department would actually have to release those files. But one by one, just earlier today, I mean, it was a remarkable moment here on Capitol Hill. The bravery of these survivors to come forward one by one, many of them with photos of themselves at the age when they first met Epstein, as young as 14 years old, holding those photos up and describing the pain that they have endured, and describing the silence that they felt, and then describing the community and the strength in the community that they feel standing with those fellow survivors and urging Congress to finally take action. Each of them also really commending Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has faced immense pressure to back away from this effort, Congressman Thomas Massie, and the Democrat who co-sponsored this legislation as well, Ro Khanna, for their efforts as well. So it was a emotional moment here on Capitol Hill, and they just left the Hill right now, really celebrating this achievement here by the House clearing this vote.
Indeed. Rachel, Jay, Catherine, and Kim, thank you all so much for the ongoing coverage today.